Check, check. Right. Yeah, welcome everyone. So now we have a panel on the social context layer. So we all have a lot of social context in crypto, even though we work on technologies, but we rarely really address directly the social context layer and what we can create there and how that influences the crypto scene, but also the world in general around the crypto scene. And I'm particularly excited here about this panel because we have an amazing group here. We have people who create villages, events, which create things in the social context layer. And we have people here who deeply analyze the social context layer. And sometimes also have a critical view on it, which is interesting as well, especially for discussion here. So let's start with a quick introduction round. I'm Chris, and I'm building something in the social context layer, which is ZuBerlin, which is Berlin's Suzalu spinoff next month, and I'm super excited about that. But we can talk more about that at another point. And then we have Sam here, Timour, and Ira, but I'll let them introduce themselves and give a bit of their context so you can get to know them a bit before we start.
Hi, I'm Sam. This panel kind of originated from the Brew organizers asking if I could speak about a recent essay that I published with Other Internet. And it's kind of an expansive topic, but we'll get into kind of a little bit of the context there. I wanted to open it up as a panel, and they put this together. I'm very interested to have a conversation with these folks who are kind of like building these little micro societies. And I think the piece kind of speaks to that and how crypto might intersect with that work. Day to day I do kind of product and strategy work in the Cosmos space, so I'm fairly low level building protocols.
Hey guys, I'm Timour. My background is originally in mathematics, and then as a founder and investor, I, a year ago, would not have expected to be on a panel about the social context space, but I was part of the original ZuBerlin event. I helped to organize the AI week there, and then got very excited about this type of environment that I think of as a pop-up village. I helped to organize the second pop-up that we did with ZuBerlin, and then I'm now focusing on this full-time with a project called Edge City. We essentially aim to bring together about 200, 300 people to live together for a month or two. It's generally folks who are either in science, tech, or culture and social work in some way. And the next big event we're doing is for the month of June in California.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining our panel today. My name is Ira, I'm the creative director at DWeb Camp. And DWeb Camp is 5 days conference and retreat in Redwoods, California for builders of decentralized web. So since 2018, 500 of builders gathered together to do workshops, to do talks, but mostly and primary is to sit together on the grass and talk about what the big next technology will come to save humanity from those crises we live in these days. And our event, we don't call it a crypto event, it's not a Web3 event, because we tackle decentralization as a whole, and on our event there are metrics, Cuddlebot, EFF, Fight for the Future are coming, and mostly it's focused on actually like decentralized technology builders and policy makers and those who will use this technology for the common good, and this is a very shared both ZuBerlin and Edge City, that we are so heavily focused on solving humanity's problems, not just making fun crypto stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, really wonderful group we have here together. So in terms of creating social context in crypto, there have been a lot of different approaches. Bottom-up approaches, top-down approaches, and concepts like the network state. Some of you might have heard of it, ideas also pushed forward by people such as Balaji, and there's a lot of different perspectives on that. There's critical perspectives, and there's aspects which excite people. And Sam wrote a pretty interesting piece here called Crypto's Three-Body Problem, where he examined that a bit. Would you mind telling us a bit about what that's about and giving a bit of the gist of it?
Yeah. So this is an essay that was written over the course of over a year, and it was co-authored with two friends, Toby Shorn and Laura Lottie. And it kind of covers a bunch of different subjects, but the main thrust of it is like trying to get at like what is a crypto protocol, like what are we building, and goes back to the beginning. So the kind of origin story of Bitcoin, like you can kind of start it anywhere you want, but like I often started at financial crisis, and it itself is a kind of critique of financial institutions, central banks and lending institutions. So like at the kind of origin is some kind of question about like, can we build alternative institutions? Like, can we do something different? Can we make these more automated and less susceptible to capture? And throughout the course of the last 15 years, we've kind of gone from really trying to examine like money at the monetary institution to this kind of explosion of different ideas about like building new state structures or new societies. And this is not like a new phenomenon. Like I think there's just kind of a cyclic thing where at some point there's like a technological revolution, a kind of dissonance with society, and then like culture tries to like integrate that in some way and like split off. This is like the Back to the Land movement, for instance, same kind of idea. It's like experimenting with a new type of culture. And so the question that we're kind of examining in the piece is like, okay, we have this new tool here, a protocol. We're kind of trying to understand what it is, protocol, blockchain protocol in particular. And a lot of people are kind of mapping different metaphors onto this. So a corporation or a state or a religion or whatever. These are all institutions. These are like kind of collective structures where people come together and kind of participate in some coordinated behavior. And like, what is the protocol in that context? And so the argument is like, a lot of the background discussion was like, the network state idea seems like pretty hollowed out and skeuomorphic. We need to kind of like reposition that a little bit. There are things that kind of make sense from that, but there's a lot that doesn't. And I think that we kind of need to aim for something slightly different. I'll maybe just say like one or 2 points about that, and then I would love to just kind of like talk about these different like instantiations of little microcultures that you all are creating, and we can have some discussion there. So one of the things that we're kind of observing about protocols is that by definition they're kind of lawless spaces. Like that is the point of them. They're censorship resistant. They are resistant to like outside coercive structures. Like you cannot change them, or an outside party cannot change them. And for that reason, you have less kind of facilities available to you to kind of enforce a complete culture. Law actually does a lot. It's this kind of like binding force among many other kind of primitives that you use to build a society. So we work pretty heavily off of this like Lawrence Lessig framework that identifies 4 forces, and there's different ways to kind of divide this, but we went with this. And those are markets, norms, architecture, and law. And so the idea is like law is a little bit this kind of binding force that allows you to like reconfigure some of these together and harmonize them. And crypto just doesn't really have this. It's kind of like intrinsically antagonistic to law. So when you talk about building like a nation on a crypto protocol, it just like doesn't really make a lot of sense, because you're necessarily like excluding a lot of the elements that are required or that need to be addressed within a society. But these little kind of pop-up cultures, pop-up like events, do a lot more to kind of set that context. And yeah, so I think there's just kind of a broader question of like, okay, maybe the protocols are something a little bit different. They're maybe more complementary or orthogonal to like physical structures. How do you kind of like layer them into each other or integrate them? And if we do this already with existing institutions. So like religion, for instance, is like layered into the state. Like, and sometimes they conflict with each other, right? Like separation of church and state. But these are two kind of like two institutions that are kind of all-encompassing in some respects, but they need to be kind of harmonized. And that's like more the mental model that I think we should bring to this, is that this is like an additional layer that you can use to address specific structures, and it's going to need to be kind of folded in or kind of divided from existing institutions in some way. Yeah, so I'll pause there. I would love all 3 of you are doing different like kind of instantiations to this. So I'd love maybe you could just say a word about like what's interesting in that space. What are you trying to do in that? When you're doing these events?
Yeah, I think there's it's a very interesting line of inquiry. There's a lot there, a lot of interesting ideas. I was kind of popping off as you were talking, but I think there's a couple threads for me that stand out to pull on. One is I'm completely in agreement that I think these new types of network states, I rarely use that term, but I think it's just a little bit too far right now. I don't think we should be aiming for nationhood or statehood. I don't even necessarily see the role that crypto has to play in all of that. I think we should think more about the norms side of what of the 4 things you mentioned, and then through that there is maybe a hazy way to some of these bigger ideas about new forms of institutions and general kind of like international global community structures. So what's interesting to me about what we're doing is I kind of see it as a way to create a new design surface area for potential community structures or just agglomerations of people in various ways, right? So it's looking like there's going to be a pop-up village pretty much throughout the year that you can go to, and you experience different configurations of communities and groups of people, and you can build new technologies within that context. You can try them out. As an example, your co-author on your paper, Toby Shorin, is coming to the June event and is using it as a canvas in which to explore a new research project called Care Culture. And the very quick TLDR on that is that he's bringing mental health practitioners to come and give services to people, and he's kind of researching how that affects the community. And so I think creating and instantiating spaces for experiments like this to run is, to me, super interesting. And then just through the act of doing that, it creates some of the social context around the very like ethereal online communities that we have. So that's super exciting to me. I think the law side and the market side and the architecture side, we are very far away from having anything meaningful to say there. And so I think for us, it's just being like honest about that. But we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts as well.
So, as a designer, I will tell you, if protocol drives user experience, this is something that stops a lot of Web3 products from adoption. So, it's like, if we talk about DWeb Camp and HCT, and we don't talk about crypto protocols, right? We talk about programming and how things work, because they should work like this, no step left or right during this period of time. And first, like, you need to think, like, what experience do you want to bring and what people are coming and you're trying to attract, because people are wired, they build, they have mental models, and then you shape this like first version of protocol, and then you put it into the test. And like, you have this hope for the good experience and good outcomes, and that's like the way I think also how even like Web3 products should build their stuff. It's not like, hey, we have this smart contract or protocol, do we experience that will match this? That's like really bad, because you cannot change people by what you run the code. But then there is a challenge, is that how much do you put coordination into this? Like, because both events, they invite, like all our events, we invite companies and teams to co-create programs with us. And as the more people you have, the more challenges of coordinating them and actually making it like, you have your own selfish vision how you want things to run. So how you're going forward all together and how you coordinate this. And for us, it's not that a big problem, because DWeb Camp is happening over 5 days, and all the creation of this 5 days protocol takes place before the event. And once before the event, everything is carved up. Things work like this, and in this area. In that area, just because this part of the whole program was created by another team, they work that way. And now, if we want to make everything run smoothly, like no step left, no step right, and then there is reflection time and the time to actually ship this protocol. And we have like enough time to do this, so to reflect on the experience based on the protocol. But with the Edge seat, I'm very curious if this will be a pop-up village over the whole year. How do you do this protocol iterations so they don't impact experience of people who have been experienced, like following the first version of protocol, and now they're transitioning to the second version of protocol just because you wanted to improve something? Like, how does that work?
Do you want to comment? Okay, I'll go first in terms of, looking at the crypto space and crypto pop-up villages we create, and then society. Like, I think it's nice to see this bi-directional thing of learning from each other. It's not only that society can learn from the crypto world how to approach novelty and to try new things, but it's also what can we learn from society, how can we approach society, and embrace it with open arms in a way. And so also when we create pop-up villages in different places, like, it's not only about this top-down thing of we come here as like technology magicians and we know everything, and then we just benefit from the underlying infrastructure that's there, but also what can we learn from the place where we actually hold the pop-up village or something like that. So what can we bring up from that culture? So for example, here in Berlin, like, if there's the art and the music scene and people are like very self-explorative here in Berlin, how can we bring that in, like the emotional exploration? And those are things we try to also incorporate at ZuBerlin, but also other pop-up villages do that, and it's really beautiful. Or also to incorporate families like Edge City Dish as Esmeralda does. So those are really beautiful things we can bring in from society and where we can also adopt a bottom-up perspective and not always believe like we can reinvent everything, but also acknowledge that sometimes we just use existing concepts from society and those are good and we are also products of our cultures in a way. Yeah.
Maybe y'all could just comment on, there's supposed to be some kind of like feedback loop here, right? And so you like enter into this kind of like temporary space where there's a convergence of people from different walks of life, people with different ideas, people kind of experiment, and like there's an alternative like mode of engagement. And then something's supposed to happen afterwards, right? As far as I understand, it's not necessarily just about the experience, it's about kind of like what happens to the people after, what they're able to do. I'm curious like how you think about that and you know, what does a success look like for you?
And I want also to answer your question by circling back to what Chris said. It goes beyond what we want to take from the community or the place we're coming to. It also what we can bring to this place when we are there. Like DWeb camp is happening on the Native American land every year. Like we need to know about this land, and every year we invite communities. There are a few communities around, and they come. And there are also technology people there, and they're in the Web3. So what we can give them as what tools can give them to actually make their living easier, to solve their problems. And I think history has so many lessons learned. When people were coming to a particular location to take something out there, to get inspired, and they take off, it's good that they take off. And sometimes they just stay. So if we come to this land, what we can bring as a guest gift to the people which will surround us.
Just the takeaways from the event.
Okay.
What happens after?
Oh, well, we do have our expectations for the event. For us, the success point is when we know that on the next camp, and even if you don't need to come to the next camp, that these people met, they had an idea, and now they work together toward a particular goal. Like that is what the whole idea, and I think this is all the shared ideas among us, is that we are so decentralized. Hello, decentralization. We are so decentralized, and so many people are working or just dreaming about the same ideas. But how can we find each other? And how we actually can have a space to turn this momentum of 5 minutes chit-chat next to the lunch table into the first energy spark in between, like, okay, we are working, we are already doing something together, so let's continue doing it. And I think only these events like DWeb Camp, like Edge City, they give you space without being surrounded in the city, right? But also the time to connect better and to start working on something and to first find each other and then start working. And for DWeb Camp, it was always a success if we know that people met at the camp and then now we are working on this project. Like Hope, right? That was born at DWeb Camp. So many other projects, I just cannot mention them right now. But that is, let's call it a success metric, but this is the common goal.
Yeah, plus one to that. I think we've been doing this for less time, and for example, DWeb, and so I think my answer can be factual to the extent of the last 12 months, or it can be aspirational as to what we would like the effects to be. In terms of what has already happened, I think just in the last 12 months there are it's very hard to measure, but on the order of probably thousands of connection points, friendships, a couple of marriages already, I think a kid, which is pretty cool, and you know, countless projects, etc. Several big companies now that have had good fundraisers, and a lot of interesting open source projects that I'm really excited about. But yeah, I think where we want to get to is a cadence of, and sorry, one correction, we don't have villages throughout the year. We're on a cadence of 2 per year, each one's about a month, so they're about 6 months apart. A cadence where people come, they collaborate, instantiate new ideas, those ideas get published as new research concepts, projects, or potentially, other like companies and technical projects. And then in the interim months between the events, there is meaningful progress made on them, and then there's this kind of cadence of improvement throughout. One example is there is an idea that is somewhat adjacent to network states that has been called coordinations or new network sovereignties. It's being primarily driven by Primavera de Filippi from Harvard. And that was an idea that there was a semblance of it before ZuBerlin, and then they brought together 20 people to be in a intensive workshop at ZuBerlin, and out of that came a research paper, and it really spawned what I think could be a very interesting and important movement. And they're now doing the part 2 of that at Esmeralda next month. And so I think, and to hear Primavera talk about it, she says this could not have existed without ZuBerlin. It just would not have happened. Those people would not have gotten together, etc. So again, much more aspirational, I would say, but creating environments for things like that to get instantiated is for me a really big success metric.
Yeah, I second that. It's definitely so fulfilling to see human flourishing happening in those spaces, and not only individuals, but also groups of humans. And if you take that analogy of like a seed kind of flourishing and then it grows by itself and you don't have to put anything else in anymore, maybe it's also interesting to look at like not only the plant and the seed flourishing, but also the soil, like the place where it actually could happen, and to see positive effects there. So like in the places where we create those things, that it also ripples back and society profits in a way as well. And that would be super beautiful to see. Yeah, Sam, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to bring this down. That was way too hopeful. So, part of the issue with these kind of temporary autonomous zones is that, I mean, you just look at like the subject matter that's discussed, and it's like disruptive technologies and financial structures, and like you're not talking about like water treatment, or like land irrigation. It's like there's a dog. Everybody's distracted, including me. Yeah, there's kind of a self-selection of like subject matter, and it's like stuff that's sexy and that you can raise a big VC round on. But like behind all of these is like some kind of implicit critique that like society needs to be fixed in some way. That's like why you're all there. Like something, we need to do something differently. We want to do something differently. And there's kind of a theory of change that's like implicit in the event structure. Like we're going to bring together the best minds and a creative set of people, and it's largely metropolitan, like wealthy, people who can jet set around the world. And I mean, I participate in these things too, but like the theory of change that's asserted here is like, okay, these are the change makers. We're going to kind of inspire them, and they're going to go on to do a startup, or like, I don't know, like put some legislation in place, and like that's going to be the way. And I'm just not sure that that's the way, to be honest. It feels like the social layer kind of needs to like expand its definition of like what is social and who fits within that social layer. Like there's a lot of different people in the world, and like most of them don't care about disruptive technologies. They just want to like shave 5 minutes off it. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious about like topic selection. Push back on this, I guess. Like, tell me that I'm wrong.
No, I could not agree more, actually. To the extent that it makes me uncomfortable to even say the word society when talking about anything that we do. And I feel this a lot in crypto, actually, and I'm kind of going to out myself as not a hater, but just a skeptic, I guess. Like, when talking with folks who are building really interesting products, but it's, some kind of protocol, some kind of liquid staking or something, and then start to talk about the effect that this will have on society. I think there is a there, but I think any kind of societal change is so complex, it's so multivariate, that focusing on anything like this, and actually I'll point this at myself, like, we are not, this is very much an aspirational thing. This is like a 5 to 10 years out thing, hopefully, best case. Right now, what we're doing is we're gathering intelligent, high agency people in one place for a long time. It's a novel format that people aren't used to. That leads to interesting connections. I think it leads to a meaningfully deeper set of connections. And there are interesting projects that come out of it, mostly technology, some research, some philosophical. I want to think and hope that there will be some societal effect from that, but I wouldn't say we're like right now changing the world.
All right, we have to slowly get towards closing, so a few last words. Iryna wants to say something, and then we get to a last closing round if you want to add something.
How do we pick topics and the focus? And like, let's be aspirational. Let's be like really thinking big, because we live in a big world, and although people not always use our technologies, the impact of technology will improve their lives. They don't know about this yet, and this is the beauty of like, how do you communicate what you're doing, and how do you actually do the right thing. Every year when we do DWeb camp, we start with one single workshop exercise. Let's map all the global crises currently in the world, globally, regionally, and locally. And there were like everything. There was war, and there was lack of water, lack of education, money scarcity, everything was there. And then all this, we needed to pick something, like the group, like what the category we are going to tackle this year. And the topic for the DWeb camp of this year is migration, moving together. And I'm a creative director, and they picked the migration as a topic. I'm like, wow, guys, and how can we make it a little bit more positive and cheerful? Like, how we create the joy feel around this heavy topic? But we cannot sugarcoat it in any way. It's just, it's present, and there's so many social issues related to migration, and there is absolutely no technology that can help with all these issues. So that's how we create, like, this is the main theme, and then who can we invite to actually co-create the technology that will tackle this problem. That's how we approach. So the approach is really simple. It's very aspirational. No, we will not fix all the migration problems in the world this year, but at least we can kick off something. And let's see where those projects will go forward. And that's the goal of all our social events.
Thank you so much for the panel and inspirational touch points, a little bit of fiction and critique, and love that. So I feel inspired and hope all of you as well. And thank you so much.